I have a cousin by marriage, husband's cousin, that's 22 and dying of cancer. It was always her dream to marry and be a mom, and now that's not going to happen. It's hard on everyone. She has a much older fiancé, 30 years, and they had a symbolic wedding so she could have the experience. They started looking for ways to get access to a baby that she could take care of and experience some level of child care that way. But with 2020 and ethics in general, there's not a lot of ways to do that safely. My husband and I have the first and so far only children of our generation, who are 10 months and 23 months old. I had hopes that it wouldn't happen, but her parents asked me if she / they could borrow my younger baby for a few weeks. The cousin and her fiancé would basically be play acting having a baby. Her parents would also join in on pretending. There would be photo shoots and everything. This makes me really uncomfortable. It's really creepy. I cannot understate how creepy I think this is. I know that her not getting to live her dreams is sad, but I don't think this is the answer. I'm worried it will be traumatic for my baby. She's almost a year old and will, well, notice that her entire family will just vanish overnight for what will seem like forever. She's also still nursing, and they don't really seem to care about this factor. I'm really worried about problems down the road. This is setting a dangerous precedent of my child living under other guardianship. Her parents will have time to get attached, and they could try to use that for familial pressure if not legally. Her fiancé is also a wild card in that regard. I said no, and my husband's entire family is hounding us about this because her time is running out and it's time sensitive. They say we're being selfish. They say that we could use this as a free vacation and bond with our older child because I popped them out so close together. They want to compromise now by letting me come by a few times a day to bring milk. We still don't want to do this. Yesterday afternoon, we got an email from the cousin's parents offering actual dollar amounts for us to agree. We got enough from that to file a police report and at least get the threat in writing. We also had a call with my husband's parents and his siblings to basically clear the air. Apparently what they were telling people they asked for and what they were actually asking for were very different. Everyone on that call now had them blocked on social media except for mother-in-law, because of the cousin. I come from a conservative Christian family. All my family members were / are involved in the church and have church-based jobs. When they met my wife, they loved her and embraced her as their own. We dated for 2 years and discovered she was pregnant after we got engaged. Invitations were already given at the time, and we decided to still have the wedding on date when my wife was 5 months in. My family were furious when they found out my wife was pregnant. They asked if we even still considered having a wedding. I said why not, but they were very upset, especially mom and dad, who said they've always been known for their decency and good Christian values, and weren't willing to let this stain their reputation. As in my wife and I getting married while pregnant. They officially dropped out and refused to negotiate, saying it was done and I have only myself to blame for this outcome, and should move the wedding out of town. I was hurt. I tried to change their minds and checked with other members, but my brother said he had no intentions to look like a joke in front of his fellow church members and dropped out. My aunt pretended to be sick and said she may not be able to make it. She's 100% healthy. My cousin said he had business trip and stopped his wife and kids from attending, and my uncle cussed me out, torn the invitation and kicked me out. I felt terrible with no family members of my own to support me and share my joy at my wedding. I even broke down crying after the ceremony. I haven't spoken to them for months and then got busy with my 4-week-old daughter. My cousin reached out to hand me gifts and well wishes for the birth of my daughter sent from my family. I returned everything. He sat with me on behalf of the family, saying I shouldn't have returned gifts that were from my family who want to see and hopefully be involved in my daughter's life. He said Mom's longing to meet her grandbaby and everyone else is wanting to visit soon to celebrate my daughter's life. I asked him this question. I said, wasn't my daughter the reason why the entire lot of them abandoned my wedding? He just stared grudgingly as I went on about how they treated my daughter as something to be ashamed of and hide. My daughter at some point will ask about the wedding, and I have no intentions on lying to her. He replied saying he guaranteed I got it all wrong, and no matter what goes down between us I can never deny that my daughter is their granddaughter, //niece / etc., and they're her family. He asked that I arrange for them to visit, but I refused. He kept pressing the idea, but I shut him down. My wife says I should let them come, but I still refused. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years now. Every year at the end of summer, my boyfriend's family has a beach trip. They have a cute cottage that they go to visit a few times a year. Last year I was unable to join, but this year I was able to make it. I've met his family before many times and we get along well, so I was looking forward to it. While I was packing, I was sure to include nicer dresses in case we went out, and even included a more modest bikini than I would usually wear. This one is still a bikini, but is full coverage unlike my others. I know his family can be a little more conservative, so I kept that in mind when packing. I even went over everything I packed with my boyfriend. On the trip was my BF and I, his younger brother, his older brother, his sister-in-law, and his parents. The first day went by really well. Our flight didn't have any issues, we unpacked, got settled, and all went out for dinner. The next day we had planned to go out on the boat. So I put on my bikini and had a cover up. No one said anything to me as we were leaving, or even when we were on the boat. I spent the whole day in my bikini without a single comment. It wasn't until that night I realized people had an issue with it. We were all drinking on the boat, with the exception of my BFS sister-in-law because she's pregnant. And we continued drinking when we got back. So after dinner, we were all pretty wasted. When we were talking about our time on the boat, my BFS dad made a comment about how everyone was staring at me because of my slutty bikini. I was embarrassed and just laughed it off, but then everyone else chimed in to comment on it. His mom laughed and said it was fine, that she would wear nothing if she were young again. But then his younger brother said that I basically was wearing nothing. I defended myself and said it was the most conservative suit I had. And then his older brother said that it didn't leave anything to the imagination. And that if he were single, he would have tried to steal me away. That comment made me pretty uncomfortable, and I could tell it made his wife uncomfortable too. I asked if she would wear bikinis on the trip, and my BFS dad interrupted and said that she did, but it was different. My BF just laughed along with all of this, didn't even see anything wrong with it. When I told him to say something, he said that I did look like I was trying to get dick down. Well, that comment was the last straw. I went to our room. I wanted to leave early after all that. But we only had a few days, so I just pushed it in the back of my mind and kept to myself the rest of our trip. I know they were just joking, but what they said really bothered me and made me feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure why my BF doesn't get that. He just keeps saying that they were joking around. But it obviously wasn't very funny to me, so now he's saying I ruined the trip by moping around the rest of the time. 6 years ago my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth. Because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home.